Hello and welcome to another fun-filled edition of Adam's Music Box. Well, rock and roll, many different subgenres, but when you think about it, one thing that's always been associated with rock and roll is coolness and rebellion. Rush broke that mold because they were very different and they were very original. They satisfied that, but they were also the geekiest band ever. Yet they succeeded beyond the wildest dreams of anyone, and they weirdly made it into an age where, thanks to YouTube in many ways, musical geekery has gone from the periphery to the mainstream. Think about it. You've got people on YouTube sitting alone rather than on stage playing music to really show off their skills, to prove to the world how virtuosic they are. Kind of geeky, but really interesting. You have channels, I guess, like this and like Rick Beato that are all about the ins and outs of music. It's no longer enough just to enjoy it, but although that's still obviously the primary component, it's about analyzing it, learning about it, having discussions and debates about what do you like, this or that, who's great, this, that, or the other. I'm doing it right now, I think. Um, and yet they came to life in the 70s where that wasn't as central to the overall discourse about music, but they did it their way. And once you got the classic lineup of Geddy Lee, Alex Lifeson, and Neil Peart, it really became something unto itself. And I mean, they had all of the makings of a band that wouldn't succeed in an age where, albeit it was the 70s, much more open-minded, but even then, they were really all about skill and virtuosity. You had a very geeky bass player and lead vocalist with a very high voice, kind of even by John Anderson standards. You had a virtuosic but goofy guitarist, Geddy Lee. I mean, Alex Lifeson. Did I get that confused? Obviously, Geddy Lee's bass player, Alex Lifeson guitar. Great sense of humor, great guitar player. And then you bring in virtuosic drummer, poet, philosopher, and objectivist libertarian Neil Peart, and you get Rush. And the first few albums didn't really succeed all that much. There are some songs on them now regarded as classics, but it was really 2112 that blew the band up because it was sort of it was both progressive and hard. I mean, when the band first formed, they were compared more to Led Zeppelin than Yes, and then they became a band that could be compared to both. But once you really got to the sort of fourth and fifth album, you've got, Farewell to Kings. You've got Hemispheres. By that sort of time, they were really a band that had their own distinct sound. And it was one that was very rhythmic because of the lead drumming of Neil Peart that wasn't improvisational. Everything that he played, he composed. You had guitar virtuosity that both rocked very hard but was very intricate. And you not only had a lead drummer, but you had a lead bass player, if you will, in the form of Geddy Lee. And then when you add the keyboards that came more and more into prominence as the band went along, they created a sound that couldn't really be compared to anything but themselves. And even by the very high standards of the prog rock world, their live performances were among the best of any live band. And they were always looking for new musical technologies to make the world's biggest trio sound even bigger. They were one of the first bands, for instance, to use MIDI triggers. And they went from strength to strength. And even though they arguably changed their sound in the 80s to write somewhat more concise songs where the synthesizer had a role that was as prominent as the guitar. Some would say arguably more. There was still a remarkable consistency in the style of composition, in the high level of execution, and in the deeply philosophical lyrics of Neil Peart, one of the most interesting and instantly recognizable lyricists in all of music. And then in the 90s, they stripped down to more of a guitar driven sound again. But again, this consistency remained. And they didn't really ever lose fans. They were never really the kind of band that would be the stars of a TV show or would be the band that listeners of pop music would necessarily be familiar with, but in many ways they were the biggest cult band of all time. Between FM DJs playing what they wanted to play at that time that were very good to Rush. I mean, Jim Ladd, the Lost DJ himself, played a lot of their music, to the fact that they gained a well-deserved reputation for being such a great live band, to the fact that their albums were consistently selling to their fan base. They built a huge cult following, a cult that could fill football stadiums, from London to Rio de Janeiro to Toronto, and everywhere in between. And I think in many ways, South Park really did them justice because all of these sort of anti hero stereotypes in the rock and roll business that I mentioned earlier fit perfectly with South Park. Neil is a libertarian, or was. The South Park guys are libertarians. Rush are Canadian. South Park really, really makes fun of Canadians a lot. And so Rush have been featured on and off, in South Park. I mean, one of my favorites is when Cartman is, well, the kids are in a Rush tribute band, and Cartman is just making up his own words to Tom Sawyer. And there was recently a South Park concert in at the famous Red Rocks Amphitheater in Colorado, and one of the guests were Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson. This was after Neil Peart's death. I think he died in early 2020. What a horrible year that was. Um, but that was what happened then. But the two of them got reunited with the South Park guys, who themselves are incredibly musical. Um, and they did their stuff, and it was really great. I mean, Family Guy have a lot of references. They're one of these bands where the more intelligent satire shows just love them because they revel in the fact that they're these anti-heroes, that, libertarian lyrics and virtuosic playing without any consideration for, style and fashion and all that. And until their final tour, again, they never fell off. The venues, if anything, got bigger and bigger. They took a retirement, I think, around 2015, and Neil died, which meant that a true Rush reunion is never going to happen. There have been rumors that Geddy and Alex might do something. Who knows? But there'll always be the albums. There were lots of them. I don't think they ever put out a bad one. That says a lot for a band that was so prolific in its output. So, happy rushing, everyone, and we will see you next time. Take care. Don't forget to like and subscribe.